may I invite you in a special role as announcer, introducer of Rutger. Is it okay? Okay. Rutger, please come already. Ellen, you know, Ellen is one of the 4 honored members of our cosmopolitan parliament. Go ahead.
Okay, Rutger van Rie goes by a false name, but paradoxically, you don't know what it is. He is a poet, is a propagandist, and a cartographer who made this map of free culture in Amsterdam, which is available at retail. He works in the Anarchist bookstore. He's part of the Fort Het van Schaapwood collective. I met him, he's been active in Amsterdam since the mid-1990s. I met him at Quartier in Den Haag, which is a contemporary art exhibition space, which was squatted. It's a bakery behind the Royal Stables. I came to do an art piece project about squatting, and Rutger came to talk about squatting in Amsterdam. And so we kind of had these artists remember where they came from. And it was a very interesting experience. He's here now to present to you a text, which maybe is related to his writing project that he's executing with a friend. It's not the White Book of Squatting, but it is the Wild Book of Squatting. Rutger van Rie.
Alan, thank you very much. I don't know exactly why I've been so honored to get an official introductor, but happy with it. Thanks to everyone attending, of course, and to all the previous speeches. The last one was very lively and happy again, so that was nice. Indeed, one of my primary credentials, I guess, that got me this position here was a project that typically didn't even solidify yet, it didn't materialize. It's this book that Alan has just mentioned. It has a bit of a prehistory. You know that there is a tradition of, am I speaking too loud or is this okay? Okay. That there is a history of making black books with a certain political phenomenon that you dislike. And in such a way, a member of the Dutch VVD, the right-wing liberals, made a black book on squatting once. It was a little collage about what bad people squatters are. And in response, quite rightfully, some people made a white book of squatting. And the white book was to show you that actually squatters are really sweet people and that they do good stuff for the neighborhood. Well, I don't want to deny the truth in this, but a friend of mine, unfortunately she couldn't be here today, she indeed decided that there needed to be another answer to the white book, I guess. It would be called the Wild Book of Squatting, and it would show that indeed squatters are very sweet people, but they're also fighters, and the stuff that they create is not always successful stories for the neighborhood, but also epic failures and rawness, just such as you find in life in general. And that touches a bit on the theme of the talk that I have for today. I'm sorry that I'll be reading it up from a bit of paper, but I hope it will still be of some amusement. And if it isn't, then you are very free to lie down, have a nap, in any position and on any space that you want, and just have somebody wake you up when it's all over. Yeah, so everybody, do as you please, come closer. This is a punk show, so there is no boundary between me and you, and or the parliament over here, our well-honored members of the parliament. So mingle and do as you please. Right, so let me please summarize my talk up front a little bit, because it will be of Fidel Castroian length, so some summary might be of use. Free cultural spaces are often presented as places in which interesting and freaky people are allowed to go about their interesting and freaky ways. Also, these spaces may be expected to provide cultural input to benefit the creative or sustainable economy. Thereby, they may, in the worst cases, serve as a vanguard of the city government's gentrification fetish and the branding and commodification of alternative culture. Goals for which, in turn, society may then benevolently grant some geographical and legal space. I think the NDSM has already been mentioned. The original artists have been moved out because rents have been upped, etc., etc. And now there's still some interesting things going on, lovely things even, but there's also a big MTV office. So beware. And indeed, it has also been mentioned that there are also many great spaces left where such a thing has not happened, as we see around us over here. Now, contrastingly to such branding and commodification, I would hope that we can make free spaces that are havens indeed of all those so-called alternative and freaky and deviant cultures, but not to serve as a colorful veneer smeared on top of any market or government force, but rather free culture should coincide with and reinforce resistance against such absurd and unpleasant societal institutions. Because what gives more pleasure than to undermine the structures pinning you and other people down? Now please let me say something about the country where we're currently at, the Netherlands, and especially Amsterdam, often hailed as havens of freedom and tolerance, but don't let them fool you. It's like Zach de la Rocca of Rage Against the Machine said about the USA. He said, what? The land of the free? Whoever told you that is your enemy. And this also goes a bit for the Netherlands, because while our cafe terraces are bulging, the homeless are fenced out of the same public space. Immigration is criminalized more and more each year that we joyously travel to all exotic corners of the globe. We have our own particular brands of sexism and heteronormativity, and it's true, we live very privileged lives over here. I don't want to deny anything of that. But how was this wealth acquired? By theft and exploitation. So no reason to be satisfied there at all, but enough reason to be challenging the situation. And the so-called freedoms then in the Netherlands. What is meant by that? Marijuana? A lovely thing, but such a little detail of life. Marginally friendlier police officers. I mean, I have a friend who had her skull fractured in a police station into a wall while she had her handcuffs behind her back. Now, I'll admit that at the same moment somebody else of the arrestees was pissing at another officer, but still no reason to be in such a panic as to start crashing people their skulls. But it's true that repression is often softer here than in many other places. Unfortunately, it can afford to be softer. The buying off of the social contract is very successful over here. Many of the poorer people have at least their car, their food, and even a little garden, and a holiday in Spain once a year, and a lot of beer to gulp down the remaining misery. And mind you, our actual working class still labors under 19th century conditions, but they do so out of sight in Mexico, Bangladesh, and the Philippines. And repression here is not just softer, but also much more prevalent than in many other countries. Because the Netherlands is the world champion of telephone taps per citizen, and there are rules for everything and surveillance cameras everywhere. We are one of the most governed and one of the most politically passive people in the world. So, if we are interested then in actual freedom, the so-called public realm is largely lost and needs to be reclaimed, and we should be reclaiming it, building our resistance out from our hideouts and our strongholds, which are our free cultural spaces. Autonomous spaces form a tradition of creative use of space and goods that enables DIY culture to function. This can be done in the smallest ways, just building up a little bit of resistance, just showing that you are not going to cooperate, can be done in the cutest and funniest senses. I remember a place we squatted in close to Parkstraat a couple couple of years ago, and there was a big metal fencing around the place, and the people had, the owner had said that it was impossible to disrupt the fences, and it was squatter-proof, etc., etc. And so people came with a lot of material and tore the metal stuff down. And within 20 minutes or so, all the 7 doors had collapsed, and we were inside. And then during the evening, of course, there's a bit of a festive mood, and the metal plating was standing around. And we knew that their office, the office of the owner, was just around the corner actually. So one of the people said, hey, maybe we can use one of those plates and see if we can shut them out. So we move in the evening around the corner and go to the door, put the metal plate in front of it, drill 25 screws into it, and then drill the screws so that they break. And then we move and we have our little party and we go to sleep. And so the funny thing is then that the next day you know that the owner was actually much less able to enter his own place. And then he said that it would be possible for squatters to enter his abandoned, empty, speculative property. So, just a little example. Now, okay. I'll skip some things because it's going to be too long. Okay, but of course, I mean, this is big talk and big words, and I don't want to be all too masculine about it or anything, because of course, if you think, well, that's all show and big words, and you're probably right, because just like most people, I am feeble and lazy and afraid and all of these things, and many of you have probably felt this as the reality comes close to your neck, if you're dealing with political struggle, for instance, or just building your own space. That life away from the mainstream and out into uncharted territory is just as bogged down by individual and collective shortcomings as the straight road is. But at least at that point we are making an attempt, we're at least doing something. Because it's still necessary to demand the impossible, and the beach is still underneath the paving stones. And the beauty of free cultural spaces come up when people just start out stuff, not because that they think that they will win or that they think they will succeed, but because they think that it could be fun to try to organize their own personal and political lives, which are always connected, of course, the personal and the political. Because, you know, when we're speaking about politics, please don't think of politics as being something that goes on in your capital's governmental buildings or in the parliamentary party machines. You know, that type of politics is, to speak with Frank Zappa, just the entertainment branch of the military industrial complex. Yeah? And real politics, on the other hand, is everything to do with power. It goes on between you and me, on each work floor, in each bedroom. It is the politics of everyday life. I once saw a big stack of dishes to be done. You know, because if you want to make the revolution, you need to do the dishes before. And I saw a big stack of dishes standing somewhere in a squat, and beside it somebody had written, apparently everybody had moved off to do some so-called important political action, I guess, and somebody had written there, could our heroes please be so inclined as to do their own dishes next time? No gods, no masters, no babysitters. Yeah, okay. Okay, I have to go quick. Okay, so organize your life, keep on dreaming, and don't make petitions to the powers that be, but organize it yourself. Don't petition, but sabotage. Don't vote, but undermine. Don't aim for higher wages, but occupy the companies. And don't let government pet projects like city branding, as it does in Amsterdam, take over your stuff. Apparently there are some reactions, so I'm curious. Skip. Okay, so let's be clear to the outside world, because we have seen some backlash against the 60s in the Netherlands. The 60s and 70s goes together with squatter culture, etc. But let's be clear to the outside world. The problem is not that the 60s went too far. The problem is that the 60s didn't go far enough. We didn't finish it yet. And there's much to do. Because the culture that has evolved in and around squat since the 60s, and we can trace it back to ancient times and all over the globe, to the old and to the new diggers, to the countless numbers of freedom fighters against Western imperialism, to women struggling patriarchy all over the world, to the ancient Greek cynics, the Iroquois League, the Korean autonomous movement, hobos, beats, hippies, punks, free-thinking individuals. Jaegers! Hey! Yeah. This culture, you know, it's the potential to organize from below that illustrates what makes these cultures so cute and so charming, but also what makes them so dangerous in the best sense of the word. The colorful and idealist culture that is insurgent and highly practical. So they can ban squatting like they did in the Netherlands, but we didn't start this out because they asked us to, and we will not stop because they say so. Okay, so that's about it for me. So unhindered by any realism, I've put it in some comfortable simplicity, you know, the forces of liberation bravely waving their black and red and pink and silver and pirate and rainbow and purple or green flags in an apocalyptic struggle against those suckers gathered under the grey blanket of dreariness and business as usual. A call out that is as big mouthed as admittedly saturated with bluff. A call out to organize your free cultural space, organize your commune, organize your life, support illegalized people, free the animals, free your mind, do some drugs, hang out with friends, dance, have wild or lazy sex, swim, read a book, sleep on the grass, dream of the clouds, bake apple pie, throw some bricks around, wrapped in golden candy wrappers, send out furious or funny propaganda, organize, distribute, plunder and loot, keep on confusing them, keep on loving, keep on fighting. Your heart is a muscle that's just as big as your fist, and you need to use both of them for a free and fun future, starting right here and now.
One reaction. Digger Kent. You will see him tonight in Theater Spectacle. Let's go there.
Nee. Dit is already